Hi, I'm Paul Simpson from the football club. Welcome to the Brunton Bugle.
Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Brunton Bugle, the number one place to get your Carlisle United fix in the podcast world. I'm Lee Rooney.
And I'm Adam Tiffin.
It's almost over and my God are we pleased about it as United slump to another miserable home defeat. We look back on a routine 1-0 home loss to Blackpool before previewing the final home game of the season against Wycombe Wanderers this weekend. Yeah, this ending to the season is really dragging out now, isn't it, Adam? It's to the point now we just want it to be over so we can enjoy the summer, enjoy the Euros. Hopefully, Big Jerry playing there. He probably won't, to be fair, because he's probably too late, unfortunately. But
unfortunately,
but
it's it's just a case of just getting through it. Just getting through it. I mean, even though it means nothing, these last two games mean nothing, and hopefully things go our way and Derby away on the last day of the season isn't meaningful. But it's like I say, it does feel like it's just going on for so much longer than it needs to. Yeah,
it kind of feels like, can we not just forfeit every game 3-0 and just have it over and done with it at times? But I mean, what I'd say is, to be fair, there's no lack of effort from the players. It's just a combination of being not good enough and lacking confidence totally. As soon as we go a goal behind, they just don't believe that they can get back into a game. So,
it was just exactly this, and especially with all the injuries we're having, we may as well just take the losses because they don't mean anything. You know, we can't. I don't think we can mathematically get above Fleetwood. We're going to finish bottom of the league. We've had more injuries, so we're literally gaining nothing from these games.
No, it's quite frustrating, isn't it? Hopefully, we can end it with a positive home win at home at the very least, but we'll have to wait and see with that one, I think it's fair to say. We've got a few things to cover in today's episode. We've got a bit of news to cover, a few little bits, something that broke today about the FA Cup as well, which we're going to discuss briefly as well. We'll sort of cover the Blackpool game. Even allowed for the fact that we were poor, it just wasn't a good game of football. Conditions did not allow for that for a start, and we just never got going at all on that one. We'll look ahead to the Wycombe game. Obviously, we'll have behind enemy lines as part of that. Ex-Blues, and then obviously we'll wrap things up at the end. But before we get going, just a reminder, the sponsor this season, once again, has been the Carlisle United Sports Club London branch. Fantastic support they've given us over the last 3 seasons. We really, really appreciate that. They do a lot of great stuff for the club in terms of fundraising and also stuff for exiles. So in terms of arranging tickets for away games and also travel and designated pubs and that kind of thing. You can join them wherever you live in the world. You do not have to live in the southeastern London. You can live in Cumbria, you can live in Yorkshire, you can live in Lancashire, you can live in Merseyside, Great Manchester, wherever you live, you can join them. So there you go. If you want to find out how to join, go to the website, carlisle.londonbranch.org, or grab one of the guys at the designated pub before the Derby game on the last day of the season. Right then, Adam, let's get into the news and discussion section. We'll start with the update from Tom Piatak first. We'll start with the positive before we go into the negative of the FA Cup changes that have been announced earlier today. So obviously, Tom and Patty have been back over in the UK to take in the final few games of the season and continue to push forward all the stuff that's going on off the pitch, and also I'm guessing some of the transfers for next season on the pitch. And he provided an update, Big Tom did, on the YouTube channel, didn't he, the other day? And some quite interesting stuff come out of that, wasn't there?
Yeah, a few interesting talking points. Some of the stuff, which we'll get on to, is, to be honest, I think a bit underwhelming. But it's nice to have them over so often, and the way they're doing it with the rotating of who's coming over. Obviously, with the recent wedding and honeymoon of Jenna and Nick, they're probably going to be a while before they're back over here. Might be till the next season. Wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. But the way they're doing it in terms of they usually have someone over, it is nice to see.
Yeah, definitely. So, in terms of update, it was split into 2 sections. One was on the pitch and one was off the pitch. The on the pitch was pretty straightforward stuff, basically. He admitted he knew relegation was a distinct possibility when they arrived as owners, but obviously still disappointed that it's happened, still believes the club has a bright future ahead. Recruitment. Some interesting comments on this, wasn't there, Adam? And some, I don't want to say they were digs, but it was kind of sort of like little nudges to the recruitment team, wasn't there? Essentially saying that they're encouraging the staff to look beyond the existing context when they're considering targets. Interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, they're always good, and they're going to push for these much higher standards than what we've had this year. I mean, it's been plainly obvious to see that the recruitment this season hasn't been good, and Tom's been quite. I was going to say quite common. Like, he's had a few occasions where he's sort of chucked things out there in interviews to sort of hint at things that he's not happy with. Obviously, he did it with the when the ownership change was happening, about the slow movement or lack of movement from on the debt side of things, I think it was. So I think when he's dropping these hints about, we're pushing people in a certain direction, it shows that he's really trying to make a change in the club.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the problem we've got is that of the players who've been linked with in the summer, one of them's from Bradford, and that's going to make straight away make people think, "Oh, come on, another ex-Bradford player." But I mean, that's been going on for like the last 4 or 5 years. It's not just as much as Greg is going to get the stick for it. He's not the only one who's been guilty of that. No. To be fair, in recent years, but he's basically saying that the analytical model is part of this. He wants to put a structured process in place, so we're not just going back to the same old contacts for players. We're actually considering all the possible targets, and if there's a target out there who's not a regular contact of ours, let's go to their agent, let's go to that club and say, we're actually interested in this player. Is there any chance on them? And that kind of thing. And, it's getting everyone to step out of the comfort zone as much as anything, isn't it?
Yeah, and one of the things that, if anybody's watched Moneyball, the film about it was the Oakland Athletics baseball team who revolutionised using analytics to help build a team on the cheap, which is, we're not trying to do it on the cheap, but it's like you said, not just going back to the same well of players, in terms of agents or clubs that we usually go for, having a database and an analytical model, like you said, which calculates value of players in a certain way, will help the club decipher who's going to be the best fit for them. And it might not be somebody that they might immediately think of, but when they see the numbers, they can see, oh, right, okay, this is somebody that actually we think could fit in. And then once they start to do a bit more background research, it'll just widen that pool of players that they're trying to search for. Yeah,
you still got to go and watch them. You've still got to, do all the other background stuff as well. But it gives you that wider, as you said, the wider reach of players in terms of the ones I want to bring in. I think it was quite pointed, and I'd heard this from someone else, to be fair, that he recognises the importance of getting that first signing of the summer right. And I've heard that some talk that they were potentially looking and thinking they knew they needed to get not necessarily just getting a big name in as your first signing. That's not the way I'm thinking. They're thinking they just know they need to get at least maybe one done early on that's a positive, that people go, wow, okay, we are serious this season. We are looking at bringing good players in.
Mm-hmm. And that's not also, it's a marker for the fans to show the intent of the club. But also, if you're a player and you're, obviously I'm saying this from a perspective of having not been a professional footballer, I'm sure if Chris Lumsden was talking about this, he'd have a better idea about it. But just from my perspective, if I was a player and I was sort of searching around teams who I was maybe considering joining, and I saw like a really standout player was going to one of the teams that I was considering, thinking, God, he could put them up near the top end here, it would probably sway me more towards, or at least encourage me more to join that club. So, I mean, if that's the way they're thinking about it, it should be interesting to see what they actually try and do. Yeah,
for instance, Aaron Hayden, who's someone we can say has been linked with. It's all over Twitter. He's mentioned quite a lot. Someone like him stands out. You're like, wow, he was he's had his injury issues undoubtedly, but he was a pretty good player for Wrexham. So people might go, oh right, well he's gone there. Clearly, there must be a decent club. And it's interesting to note that someone pointed this out to me. Sky Bet have put out odds for next season on League Two. There's only 2 teams listed in there right now. It's ourselves and Chesterfield. Chesterfield are 10-1. We're 20-1 to win the league. And I think, you know what? Once we get a few signings in, those odds won't be that high for long. So if you want to fill your boots, guys, go and have a look at Sky Bet. They're offering 20-1 at the moment. I'm not saying it necessarily we're going to win it, but I feel like those odds are quite long considering the way we're probably going to invest in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a rule that ever since I think it was like the first or second game back after COVID where I bet on us to win and we lost, and then that started the spiral of us falling down the league. So I'm adamantly against betting on Carlisle to do anything positive. So I won't be, but it's not bad odds. I'm not gonna, unless we have a worldie of a summer. When we come to do predictions and things like that, I'm probably gonna hesitate and go away from predicting a really bold.
I mean, it does depend on the size we make, but if we do make the sort of signs that we've been linked with, those odds will drop undoubtedly. I think. Yeah. Off the pitch, a lot of interesting stuff in here, wasn't there? So, first of all, training ground, closing in on that, but you could just tell. There's a level of frustration there with him, isn't there? And I think he was quite calm about it, but he was kind of like, I don't think it's a case of it's not going to happen. I think it's just a case of we want to get that pitch in, the one pitch in for pre-season so they can actually use it. And there's something, obviously, that's just acting as a little bit of a blocker there. There wasn't a suggestion that it was the council, but you could probably read between the lines and suggest that they're dragging their feet maybe a little bit there. Can't name the location, but hinted that fans seem to already know, which throws one obvious place out for that, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, he said that he'd been asked about the place that they're looking at a few times, which for those people who have asked him about it, they'll probably already definitely know, because he's pretty much confirmed to those people, but for people who haven't asked him, it wouldn't be quite as obvious. But the rumour is it's the sheep mount, which... Yeah. I'll be interested to get your perspective on this. For me, that's the bit that I said earlier was a bit underwhelming. When I saw that, I was like, I don't know. Maybe I just had too high expectations, but I expected it to be somewhere completely brand new. I know there's not a lot of space in Carlisle to do something on this level, but I did expect them to, even if it was ever so slightly further out, to go for somewhere completely new that they could just do what they wanted with, rather than having somewhere with pre-existing faults or whatever.
The problem with it is, and I think everyone's going to say this, is flooding, because that area does flood, just like the current one does. But I think if you're starting afresh, the pitch's flooding might not necessarily be as much of an issue. I don't know, and they've talked about the fact that they will build it designed around to deal with that. So, and I guess the main change rooms that will maybe have steps going up so that basically it'll be above the flooding level, essentially, so they wouldn't flood the changing rooms and the office buildings, whatever that's going to be there. And that's what I'm presuming. I suppose the advantage is there are pitches there already, and you're basically just renovating them or bringing them up to an actual top-class standard. And there is other facilities there. And as he said, he wanted it to be in the city centre or near to the city centre, so it seems an obvious place in that sense. And I do get your point about the fact there's plenty of space there. When you look at the aerial view, there is a lot of space there to put plenty of pitches in exactly what they need. So it's a possibility. And I think most people would agree, since the last floods, there's not been the level of investment in that area of the, in terms of council facilities for quite a while. So you're talking about 8 years there. So to actually have someone come and say, we're going to pump money into this. So, and I guess the council let the club have it on a peppercorn rent for 100 years, something, if they're going to revamp it, but part of it is going to be a community facility. You've still got the running track there, for instance, that kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if that is the location. We still don't know. We're making presumptions here because that's the location everyone's mentioning, so it seems an obvious one. But yeah, there is the concern about the flooding element there. I think that's the bit that interesting to see how they explain that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, something like this is going to undertake massive work, and there's going to be a lot of changes made to it. They're not just going to, take it as it is and start training on the pitches that are currently there and using the facilities that are currently there. But even like when you look at like the parking facilities there, obviously, it's only like the staff and that, but it's not like a place that's full of areas for people to come and park and things like that. The changing room area is quite far from the pitches and things like that. Again, like I said, this is all going to be stuff that they'll have considered if it is going to be this place in terms of how can we make it as best as possible. But yeah, there's a few things that I'd be a bit concerned about initially if that is the place that they're focusing on.
Yeah, but I guess based on the ambitions they've had about these things, I'm sure they've got answers to those questions. Hopefully, we'll find out in the future.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
Yeah. Investment in the East Stand. So we talked about the East Stand works. First time we've actually heard a figure for this. he said that over £3 million is being spent on renovating the East Stand, which is like a phenomenal level when you think about it. Like, one of my friends we were messaging about this, and we were saying, like, this must be the first major investment in the ground probably since the East Stand was built, really. I mean, you've had little bits and pieces there, new club shop, and you've had the south turnstiles for the paddock were rebuilt, obviously, after COVID, but this is probably, the first one since the East Stand was built. And even before then, like, what was the next major one? You're going back to roofs being put on the Warwick Road and stuff like that. So to have this level of investment put into the club, it's such a positive, isn't it?
Of course, yeah. And I can't remember in my brief time watching Carlisle any sort of significant work. I mean, the fact that the Andrew Jenkins stand sign was put up on the stand was, for me, probably the most significant. Or the fact that the Warwick roof got painted. In my lifetime, that's what I can remember as being really big works being done. So yeah, like £3 million, like it's so much, and it's going to massively transform the runnings of the club, both on and off a match day. Interestingly,
it's actually additional hospitality facilities as well, because I think there was a little bit of confusion as to whether Foxes would still be there and the boxes would still be there, but they're going to remain. They're still going to be part of the club, so it's additional revenue coming in, basically, and it sounds like there's a waiting list for that. So this could really transform the amount of money the club makes each season, which they've needed for so long. It's just fantastic to see. Other little bit of a tidbit that came out was about a parcel of land behind the Warwick Road end is being purchased. That's part of two. It's confusing because he said about 2 houses. I don't know if they're buying the houses or just buying the sort of grass patch of land that's behind them. I think it's the ones behind sort of where Claire's Bakery is. Those bits there. If you look on Google Earth, like the aerial view, that's the biggest sort of grass patch that doesn't seem to be used, and that's going to be used as part of the fan zone for the Warwick Road end. And again, just actually hearing these things is just mad, isn't it?
It's the intent of them wanting to constantly, it's not like we're going to do everything at once, we're just going to leave it. They're building on things they did, just putting the signs up around with all the players on around the stadium. And now they're starting to, renovate the media room and things like that. And now they're getting on to this and all the plans that are being implemented over the summer. It's just constant evolution. And like I said, stuff that really should have been done probably a long time ago. But because it hasn't been done, it's really refreshing as fans to be able to see this work being done at our club, because it's been something that's been missed out on for so long, where we've maybe seen other clubs progressing in this way when we haven't. So that's why it's, it may seem to other clubs who are looking at it going, well, you probably should have done this a while ago. But the fact that it hasn't been done is why it's exciting for it to now be done.
And that's had an effect on the pitch, because we haven't been able to raise the revenues that we need for the bigger wages that other clubs can afford. So we're going to be able to do that in the future. We're not going to have to rely on the Piataks to put their money in as much, hopefully. There was a sort of hint at longer term plans in terms of the Warwick Road end and those houses that I got the feeling that the long term plan is to buy out those houses and potentially create a bigger space, because he said he'd like fans to be able to walk around the whole ground. So watch this space on that one, I guess. Season ticket prices, they're going to be frozen for next season. I think that's a good move. I've heard a few people say, I'm disappointed they're not going to be reducing them. Realistically, we're never going to be reduced. They still need to be able to pay money for the wages. So good that they're not going up. That's the important thing. And the same discounts are going to apply. So that should be the end of May. They're hoping for at least those to be on sale by. And hoping to get a fans forum sort before they go back. And they know there's going to be tough questions there. But I think there's still going to be a lot of positivity in terms of, I think it's on the pitch stuff is the bit where they're going to get challenging. Off the pitch, people are going to be singing their praises, you'd imagine. So some interesting stuff to come out there, and look, it's going to be an exciting summer. That's the key thing. Once this season's over and done with, that's when the excitement starts. So we'll see what happens then. One more bit before we talk about the FA Cup stuff. Cumberland Cup final details, so they've been confirmed. Workington beat Maryport Athletic 3-0 in the semi-final, so they're going to be Workington Reds against Carl United in the Fred Conway Cumberland Cup final. That takes place next Tuesday, the 23rd of April, kick-off 7pm. Tickets are £5 for adults and £2 concessions. And under-16s get in for free. And that's going to be at Borough Park in Workington, so a bit of a change there, because it's normally at Brunton Park. So there you go. Let's talk about the FA Cup then. This this is one that's emerged today. A little bit
Yeah.
of breaking news. So the FA have announced that FA Cup replays in the FA Cup proper. So previously, I think it's from the 5th round onwards they were scrapped. And I got that. I kind of got that. At that point, you don't really need it. There's only a handful of bigger teams left at that point. But now, 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th round, there will be no FA Cup replays anymore. Basically, to please and apparently us lovely people in the pyramid and in the wider game, the greater game, are going to get a little bit more money from the Premier League and a nice pat on the head. So it's all good, that, isn't it? It's all to help them out with this new Champions League competition where there's more games and whatnot. So that's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nice of them, isn't it? This is this really, really annoys me when I saw it, as it will have done for a lot of fans. And the more time I've had to think about it, it's just even worse. And it's what's annoyed me even more is the fact that I see, content creators or whatever from big clubs who are like, oh, there's way too many games for these big teams, all these top players, they need rest. Right. I'm going to go on a few tangents here, so I need to try and actually structure what I'm going to say. Firstly, like you said, the only time that even Championship clubs and Premier League clubs have to play replays is in the 3rd and 4th round. There's only 2 rounds of the entire competition where it's eligible for them to play replays. And I saw Regan, who in his tweet describes the people who wanted to do this as nerds. And I'm not a nerd, Regan, so appreciate if you don't use that language. But he did ask somebody to find out how many Premier League teams over however long had played replays. So like I said, it's only the first 2 rounds that Premier League and Championship clubs are in the competition is when they can play replays. And in the 21-22 season, I'm pretty sure it looks like replays were scrapped, I think maybe off the back of COVID, that they were just sort of gotten rid of. So the last 2 years, so 22-23, in rounds 3 and 4, 5 teams across both rounds played replays. 5 teams in the Premier League. That's it. So they played, and bearing in mind some of those games might have been crossover. So this year, Nottingham Forest played replays in both the 3rd and 4th round. Yeah. But so in total, across the games in those rounds, 8 teams, 2 of which were Nottingham Forest twice, played replays. That is nothing. Like, that's, on average, you've got about a quarter, 25% chance of potentially playing a replay, and they're more often than not playing worse teams. Like, it's not the lower club's fault that you're going to these smaller grounds, you're not playing as well because you're not putting out your big players or whatever.
This is the key thing, right? If they don't want to play in replays, play better. Don't draw the games. Win them. If you're the better team, you should win them.
If anyone, you might have seen it because I reposted it, but if anybody doesn't know who Steve Bracknell is, he's a brilliant guy who does. He's a comedy character. He's like a football manager for some like Sheffield team, and he was on Radio Sheffield. And I don't know if it was actually today or whether it was in the past, but I retweeted it. So anybody, please go and watch the video, because even though he's a comedy character, it's a brilliant summation of what the problem is with them scrapping the FA Cup replays, because it's just accommodating these big teams who have bigger squads and better players on more wages, who play or claim to play more games than any other team, when EFL teams play more league games. When you add in the cup competition, so rounds 1, 2, 3, whatever, plus EFL Trophy, Carabao Cup, they pretty much play the exact same amount of games. They've got worse facilities, worse physios, worse nutrition, and yet you're the ones who are getting preferential treatment, and you're on 10 times the wage. It's ridiculous. Yeah. It's such a stupid... Yeah. And the fact that EFL clubs, non-league clubs, haven't been consulted about it,
that's disgusting,
which is what Tranmere said, is ridiculous. It's just, it's mental. Imagine if the Premier League just said, right, well, Man City are only going to they're going to get 5 points for every win, just because we've consulted with them and that's what we want to do. But as a payoff, we're going to give you all an extra 10 million quid each to spend in the transfer window. Yeah. It'd be hell on.
It's mad, and it's it basically reinforces in my mind the need for this football regulator to come in at some point in the next few years, because they're just out of control, the Premier League clubs, and the FA have just bent over backwards and let them, give them it 6-0 from behind, basically. It's just absolutely outrageous, the fact that this has happened. The fact that Football League and non-league clubs have not been consulted on it, again, is utterly disgusting. And it's just... I think a boycott would be one of the best things that the clubs could do. If you just leave it down to those 20 teams, and then it just looks stupid, because the appeal of the cup has gone. If no one's in it, where's the appeal? It's just... You're right. It drives me really mad that this has happened. I've got to obviously mention Mike, obviously, who's on the pod regularly, as one of the co-hosts. He said that why is this change happening when the person who's the biggest cry-ass about this, who's leaving at the end of the season, in Jurgen Klopp, or as Dan always likes to refer to him, to a Jurgen Plop, because he's not a big fan of his. But yeah, it's stupid. It's utterly stupid for the sake of a handful of games. You know what's really wound me up about it, actually? Is literally hours later, what did the Premier League announce? That they're getting rid of the winter break. They're not going to do it next season. They're going to extend the summer break instead. Not have a winter break next season. So wait. So they're extending the winter break. They're not going to have the winter break in the thing now. So essentially they're losing space in that period as well. Anyway, January. So January's going to be back to being packed. They're going to have their money-spinning tours abroad, obviously, because that's the priority. It's infuriating that this is seen as acceptable. And this is the problem in this country as well, though, with football fans. They're two-parters at times. There should be a collective feeling on this, and this is where fans of all clubs should be protesting against this at the weekend. If this was in Germany, they'd be kicking. Look at what happened with Germany with the whole. They wanted to scrap the 50+1 thing, didn't they? Or every single club had protested it. I remember watching my team in Germany, Hertha. One of their games was delayed because they were constantly throwing tennis balls onto the pitch. I'm pretty sure Hamburg did the same. I think maybe Hansa. I can't remember. One of them, they attached a flare to a remote control car and was driving it around the pitch, weren't they? Every game was, and eventually they caved it. The authority said, "You know what? Yeah, we can't do this because the fans don't agree with it." We don't do that in this country, and we should be. We should be saying, "No, you know what? We're not going to take any crap anymore. We're going to stand up to the authorities and say, no, enough." It happened with the Super League stuff, and it worked. And I'd like to think it'll happen again, but I'm not quite as convinced on this one. I kind of feel like some of the fans of the big clubs will just accept this and go, yeah, that's fine. I know which content creator you were referring to, obviously, that idiot Goldbridge, wasn't it? He's the most armchair Man United fan you'll ever meet in your life. He doesn't even come from, he's from Nottingham, isn't he? I think he's an absolute clown, that fella. But yeah, just infuriating. The problem is, I don't think there'll be obviously a collective amongst people in the EFL, and maybe like your Leicester's or Leeds or something like that. But I think even Leeds, with their recent history of being in the EFL, would want this whole thing scrapped. But I don't think the Premier League fans, or at least the more vocal ones, would want this scrapped, because it's of benefit to them. Yeah, that's the
reason why it's been brought in. That's the reason why it's been brought in, is the fact that it's less, quote unquote, less games for these big teams. Even though, I'm trying to think of a recent game when, imagine if when Newport played Man United, I think it was 2-2 at some point.
Yeah.
Imagine if they got a draw out of that, and last year they would have gone to Old Trafford, massive away day for the club, huge revenues from the game. I mean, look at Marine, who I used to work for. Their next 10 years have been financed just from one game on TV. It wasn't even at Tottenham Hotspur, but one game against them, and it's completely revolutionised the club. They're now, doing really well. They're fighting for a promotion again for the second time in 3 years. These clubs look at Maidstone this year. The amount of money they'd have got from the games against Coventry and Ipswich, it's an absolute shambles. And I know I'm ranting, and for everyone who's listening, I hope you share my grievances. Maybe not to the quite blood-boiling state that I'm in right now, but it's one of the most stupid decisions I've ever seen.
It's a long list of mistakes that the FA and various people have made. Like, I mean, EPPP is probably the that was the pinnacle. As soon as that happened, you're like, well, great, you're screwing over the lower clubs because they can't, the bigger clubs can come and poach the place for next to nothing now, and now they're doing this. It's one thing after another, and like I said, I kind of hope that they change mind. Surely there's other solutions. If it's really that much of a problem for the European teams, well, maybe bring them in the fourth round. Maybe have most of the Premier League teams come in then. Do like you do in the League Cup. Something like that. Find another solution that's better than this. That there are other solutions that are better. But the fact that they get rid of that winter break is the bit that's wound me up even more, because the fact that it's like, well, hang on. You're now losing that extra week you had in January. So you're packing more league games in. I know there's more European games next season, but still, come on. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And even for National League North, South, even like Isthmian League teams, even in the first and second round, if they got a replay, say at Portsmouth or something like that, a massive game for them. Yeah. And they'd probably get some TV money from that, and it would massively help them. And that has nothing to do with these Premier League clubs, but for some reason they just scrapped the whole thing. It's a 130-year tradition of having replays in the FA Cup just gone because some German with naff teeth thinks that his team's playing a bit much because he's giving. I need to stop.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Anyway, we could rant about this all day, and I'm sure there'll be some interesting fallout from it over the next week or so. Interesting to notice a few EFL clubs have already put out statements. I think Grimsby and Tranmere to them, aren't they? Kiosk have put out a good statement about it. I'm very interested to see what the club's view on this is, and whether there's going to be a club statement. I'd like to think there will be, and like to think they'll stand up to this, but based on some past experience, I'm not 100% certain. I mean, it's a different ownership now, so maybe, I don't know, but after what happened with the whole trophy that we don't talk about and ignoring the fan views and that, I'd hope they've learnt a lesson there and they might take on board the fans' views in this. Kiosk should be really pushing the club as much as possible to say, we need to have a positive statement about how angry you are about this, in that sense. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Right, we've done quite a long section on the news there. We're going to keep the Blackpool review quite tight because there's not much to talk about here. Carl United 0, Blackpool 1. Terrible start. Rest of the game pretty awful. Just not a great. I mean, the weather was terrible. Not a great day all round, was it, Adam?
Not at all. I mean, the goal was a good finish from Dembele, and he's a very talented player. But as soon as it went, I was just sat in my seat, and I just leant my head back, and I was just like, oh, why do I do this? I could be at home. It's quite nice at home. It's warm. It's not windy. Yeah. I don't have to pay £12 to go there.
It was noticeable at half time. I went out into the fan zone from the paddock. How many people stayed to watch the Grand National rather than go back in? Like when they had to, there was a sudden rush about 5-10 minutes into the second half of people going to the gate to get scanned back in. So it was that probably told you how good the game was. It was just god awful game of football. It wasn't good at all. Lineup wise, in terms of changes from the Cheltenham game, there was one change. Jack Ellis came in for Finn Back, who just cannot buy any luck with injuries this season, I think it's fair to say again. Kick to the calf, ruled him out for this one. Onto the bench came Josh O'Brien, obviously on the back of his signing a scholarship for next season, which is an extended scholarship, I should say, so that was good to see. Still no place for McCalmont and Gibson. What do you reckon of Simpson's explanation on this? Fair enough?
Yeah, well, he said they're back in training, but he didn't want them to come in straight away. Just felt that... Well, I don't know if he actually said this outright, but he just felt it would have been a bit wrong, it seems, for them to just come back in straight away after being, suspended. I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't... it wouldn't be like a massive outrage for me if they didn't play at the weekend or against Derby, just to sort of prove a point. But I guess when you've got the injuries we've got, you at some point you have to go, right, we have to put egos aside a bit here and just try and get through these last few games. But I don't see why he would have brought them back in. I thought it was the right decision. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think he's done the right thing there and said, look, doesn't mean you're going to come straight back in. Interesting to see whether they're involved this weekend. I'm not sure what he said, because he's done these pre-match basically, I put together the running order on Wednesday night, so I haven't had a chance to listen to his interview he's done today because I've been busy in work. So he might have said something about Gibson and McCalmont in that.
I think he did. I'll try and find John Coleman's article quickly whilst you cover some stuff.
So that's what happened in terms of the team selection. 35 seconds in and we're 1 goal down. It might be one of the quickest goals I've seen us concede. I think I might have seen one a little bit quicker than that. I'm not sure, but I'd imagine it would be the quickest one you've seen us concede, Adam. It's
up there. I can't remember a quicker one.
It was just so simple, wasn't it? It was a long throw-in down the touchline. Barkley gets a header on it. The problem is Barkley and Huntington both went for the header on this.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why Huntington had come that far out, which left us a bit exposed. I think it's Lavery brings the ball down quite well and plays it into the path of Dembele, who at that point was one-on-one with Lewis, basically, and Lavelle was just left in his dust. And yeah, as you say, it's a good finish into the roof of the net. And at that point, you're like, are we going to get back into this? Probably not. Realistically, it just kind of felt like defensive calamities have just been our story of the season, doesn't it?
Definitely, yeah. And it's just, like you say, just Huntington moves across, sort of not really any need to. Two of them going for the same header, leaves that massive gap through the middle. He runs through, slots it away pretty quickly. I feel for everybody who's doing the Soccer Saturday Challenge, having to go to Blackpool. I know some people quite like it out in Blackpool, but I think it's a horrendous place. Yeah. But sure, that must have been the fastest goal of the weekend. But I do think there was another goal within the first minute. It might have been No, it wasn't Portsmouth, was it? I can't remember. There was
Depends
another
how
team.
late I was kicked off, to be honest. I'm not 100% certain on that. So a little bit later.
But we were probably up there, or close to being up there for the Soccer Saturday Challenge. But yeah, I mean, as soon as that went, I thought, well, I mean, we're gonna lose. It started off this way, at least if we'd have been able to hold on for 20 or so minutes and build up some confidence at the back. But that was it for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds. I'm just reading up back here now. I might find the outcome myself. It sounds like because they've had a full week of training, they might be involved. Gibson and McCalmont is not guaranteed that they will. So interesting to see if they do. Yeah,
he said they're available.
Yeah,
and he said I think once you punish somebody, you have to move on. And draw a line at some point. So yeah, I would not be surprised if both of them were back in.
Wouldn't surprise you, would you? I mean, beyond that goal, there wasn't really much to talk about in terms of what Blackpool had to offer. They didn't offer a massive amount either. I thought they were a neat and tidy side, but they looked quite toothless in attack. You can see why they've relied on Jordan Rhodes all season, can't you? Because Lavery's got some nice link-up play, but he doesn't really threaten on goal much, does he?
Yeah, and like you said, you could really tell that that Rhodes was missing and the effect that he has on the team when he comes in. It's just... I think that was almost... I could have accepted if they'd have gone on... Or not accepted, because we weren't as good as them. But had they have really gone on from that first-minute goal and just absolutely battered us, and just hold your hands up and go, right, these lads are way better than us. We stood no chance today. They were really on it. You just go, right, fair enough. But I think it's just because the game afterwards was a bit sort of wishy-washy. Yeah. And we didn't really take hold of the game, neither did they. That probably made it worse.
Yeah, Dembele had a couple of chances. We had a chance with Armstrong getting into the area, but he just couldn't get his shot away, could he? I think it just didn't quite fall for him. And then, big penalty shout for them. So Lavery gets in on the left-hand side. Paul Huntington dives in, gets a tackle in and concedes a corner. What was your thoughts on this when you saw it? Because I'll be honest with you, at first, my thoughts on it when I first saw it, I thought, if the ref's that close, he must have got his foot around and got a touch on the ball. But actually, when I've watched it back on the TV, I'm not sure he does, if I'm honest.
Well, I'll plead ignorance here and say that I haven't watched it back. But from my view, which was obviously pretty much like the angle behind them, so I probably didn't have as good a view of you in real time, that it didn't... I mean, had he pointed to the spot, I wouldn't have been like, oh, that's a horrendous decision. Yeah. But when he didn't give it, I wasn't like, oh, God, we've got away with one there. But like you said, the replays might have showed that he didn't get much of the ball. But from my angle, just because I'm not quite as high up in the stand, it didn't look that horrendous of a decision to me.
on watching back the TV coverage, for me, it looks. I thought at first it was his right foot that he'd reached around with and got it. It's actually, I think, his left foot from behind that he gets it. So the question is, does he actually catch the play before he gets to the ball? It is a tackle from behind. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a foul if he gets to the ball first and he doesn't crunch the man. But I feel like he probably did. So we probably have got away one a little bit there, I imagine. There was a couple more. I think Coulson made a good save to palm away a dangerous ball from Lewis. Lavery had a really good chance that he put over the bar when it was cut back to him towards the penalty spot that he really should have scored with. We had a couple of chances into the second half. Jaden Harris had one. It wasn't the easiest chance in the world. He couldn't get over the ball. Apparently we didn't have a shot on target, and yet I'm pretty sure Luke Armstrong's header was cleared off the line. Unless it was going wide, it looked to me like it was on target. I don't know what you thought on that one.
That might be something just to do with the stats, where I guess if maybe the keeper doesn't save it, then it's. But then again, I guess that wouldn't really make a difference, would it?
No.
But no, I did think that was probably going on target, so I'm not sure why that wouldn't have been marked down as a shot on target. But yeah, we were just lifeless, and I can't see it noted down here, but the amount of the crosses from that right hand side from various people, from Barkley was the one that sticks in my mind. I feel like there was probably somebody else. I'm not just going to pinpoint it on him because it might not have just been him, but God, they were so bad. I mean, we looked like we were an amateur team playing against a bunch of pros.
Yeah, some of the crossing was pretty terrible in this game. I can't deny that. But yeah, that's pretty much how the game played out. The second half, not really any chances for either side that were clear cut. Blackpool didn't really threaten. I mean, Mellish did have one chance, which I think he probably should have done better with, but it was on his weaker foot on the turn. It was not the easiest chance in the world. And yeah, 1-0, pretty much a fair result, and dire game of football after that explosive first 60 seconds, really, wasn't it? Not much to talk about beyond that.
No, just the awful weather that came in the final, what was it, 2 minutes?
Well, the wind was horrendous.
And also, Coyote getting his tooth knocked out.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
That's probably the only other interesting talking point from the game.
Yeah.
What luck. What awful luck.
I mean, just like ridiculous for him, isn't it? He just nothing seems to be working for him. Yeah, the weather was awful. I mean, the wind. I don't think people realise just how bad that's probably one of the worst winds I've seen at a Colour game for a long time. Up there with the wind when we were down at their place, actually, to be honest. Just didn't have the rain for most of the game.
No, I'm going to stop you there. There's nothing worse than that day. Even that performance in that game wasn't as bad as Blackpool away for me.
I feel like the wind in this game, because he didn't have the rain going with it for most of the game, I think it was worse. The one example is there was a header that I think Carey had, and it was a corner that was put in, and the loop and the height on it was just ridiculous, and it was not what the player intended at all. It was a really, really bad wind. First half especially, we really struggled with it. Second half, it died down a bit when it was supposed to be in our favour, which was quite infuriating, to be honest. But, yeah. The end of the game, the last 5 minutes, I went and stood by the exit because I thought, there's no chance we're getting anything from this. I want to get back to the car quickly. And, as soon as I think we missed a big chance, I was like, right, I'm going now. And I walked out, and it already started to rain a bit then. But I got pretty much to where the club shop was, and it was just hail, and it was horrendous walking all the way down past Lidl. I got absolutely drenched on the way back, and I'm sure Johnny's going to love everyone getting told this, but he basically was like so wet he took his jeans off for the journey back in the car because like, I can't sit. These are drenched. I cannot sit with these on the rest of the journey, so I had to put them on the heater to try and dry them out. It was awful, and it pretty much summed up the afternoon. Interesting stat. We've now equalled the club record for league defeats in a season, 28, set in the 86-87 season. It's not a great stat to have, and there's still 2 games left to go, is there?
Yeah, and they're not easy ones, so
no.
Up the record-breaking Blues, eh?
Yeah, indeed. There's not a huge amount to really take from this game, is there, I don't think. I mean, better second half than the first, but it was so lacklustre in the first half that it wouldn't have taken much to be better. Encouraging signs from Coyote when he came on, some nice little touches, and it's just so frustrating we haven't had that all season, really, isn't it? And Kelly couldn't really get into the game as much this time, but full 90 minutes from him, that's got to be a bonus as well.
Yeah, that's a good thing to take from it, just because he's building up his fitness. I saw some people who are maybe starting to question Armstrong in terms of his output. I know he talks about it on the Carlo social, and in terms of they would have hoped for at least a little bit more from him, but he's in a team that's not creating anything.
No.
He's low on confidence, and I think that chance where he was sort of on the edge of the box going towards the Warwick Road end and just didn't have the confidence to try and go past or cut inside, and he tried to lay it back to somebody. I think it was maybe to Kelly or maybe to Mellish, I can't remember.
Yeah.
And it was just to no one. I think that perfectly summed up sort of the state he's in, which also sums up the state that the whole squad's in.
He looked absolutely knackered as well, didn't he? That's the thing. Like
I didn't know that much, but it would not surprise me at all. I mean, he's played so much.
That was the first time he's been subbed since he's arrived. He's played every single minute prior to that. And bear in mind, he didn't play that much
as a lone striker.
Yeah, and he didn't play that much the first half of the season either. If you think about that, so it's going to have taken a bit out of him. It was nice to actually see him get a little bit of a rest, really. Jaden Harris got a little run out as well, which got his customary yellow card, which was nice to see. Got to mention Jack, injury-wise, bad luck once again. Jack Robinson got a stress fracture that could put him out for a few months, which potentially puts him at risk of missing the start of next season.
Yeah, I know. It's just they're piling up, and this always happens, especially when you get injuries. It just tends to pile up because then more players are having to play more minutes than they, than their bodies are obviously capable of doing, and then that leads to more injuries, and it's just that snowball effect. So we just need to get to the end of the season. Please let it end. Yeah.
At the end of the day, you can see what we're missing this season in League One when you look at a player like Dembele, and you look at a player like George Byers. I think he came off an injury, didn't he? And he looks such a good little player as well. And despite that, they look quite toothless in attack, and yet they looked a much better team than us, which is not a great sign. But there you go. Right, let's do a quick round-up of the League One results before we go into part two. Barnsley, again, their stuttering form really has hit them, hasn't it? 2-2 draw with Reading last weekend. Bolton, a 1-1 draw with Portsmouth. Cambridge got a 1-1 draw with Charlton. I think Cambridge are pretty much safe now, aren't they? I think, if I remember rightly. Obviously, we lost to Blackpool.
Probably, yeah.
Cheltenham, a bit of a blow for them. 3-1 home defeat in their local derby game against Bristol Rovers. Derby kept their hopes of a top two place alive with a 3-0 win over Leyton Orient. Fleetwood, big win for them, 2-0 against Northampton, though midweek result probably puts them down now, I think.
Pretty much.
Lincoln lost 2-1 at home against Wigan, which is a big blow for their playoff hopes. Oxford.
My bet.
Have you got a bet on them to be in the playoffs?
I've got a bet on them to make the playoffs, yeah.
Oh, it's not looking great, that now.
It's back to evens now, so it's... There's a chance, not a good chance.
Oxford United 5, Peterborough 0. Peterborough are a bizarre team, aren't they? On their day, they can be amazing. But over time,
I think they've got a bit of Sunderland syndrome, where they've got such a young, talented squad, but when it goes wrong, it really goes wrong. Like they don't really have the members of the squad to sort of go, right, we're awful today, we're going to shut up shop so this doesn't get embarrassing. Yeah,
they haven't got a Kev Gray in there who's going to basically grab them by the scruff neck saying, we're just going to grind this one out, really, that kind of thing.
This might annoy you, but I don't know who that is.
Oh, God. Yes, you've shown up how young you are now. Kevin Gray from the mid-noughties, but there you go. We're going to get tweets about that, I can guarantee you will.
I can't help it.
I know, you can't help being young. It's not your fault. Port Vale lost 4-2 at home to Exeter. There's some have you seen the videos from the end of this from their fans? And the abuse they're giving their players as they come to applaud them at the end of the game. It's
I don't think so, actually. I think I might have missed that.
Incredible. They've had such an appalling last 3 or 4 months, haven't they? I can't get it. They've probably been worse than us in that period, to be honest, which is some going. Really.
I reckon if you were to look at the form, they're probably the worst team in the league currently. Yeah. I mean, and the fact that they've got the manager who won the playoffs last season in this league either speaks volumes of how maybe he was overperforming as Sheffield Wednesday manager, or the fact that Darren Moore, not Darren Moore, the fact that Port Vale have just got a awful team.
Yeah, they've lost a couple of loan players.
They've had good recruitment though. They've got a lot of good young players.
Is Alfie Devine still there, or has he gone back to Spurs?
I don't know, but they lost Arblaster, who's now playing pretty regularly for Sheffield United. But yeah, they look like they're just sinking with us.
Yeah, Shrewsbury lost 2-0 at home to Wycombe. I think they're pretty much safe now, though, Shrewsbury, I think, after their midweek result against Bolton. And finally, Stevenage lost 2-1 at home to Burton. Interesting development there, though, Adam. Steve Evans has gone.
Yes, in typical Steve Evans fashion, he has jumped ship. at the first opportunity. He's just left. I mean, it all happened really quickly. I mean, obviously, I cover the EFL for Football League World on a daily basis, and it all just seemed to materialise so quickly because obviously Liam Richardson got sacked by Rotherham, which was really odd because he won League One a few years ago with Wigan, and seemed to be like quite a good candidate for somebody to help them to try and get back up at the first attempt. And then I saw a journalist from BBC Sheffield or something saying that, keep an eye on Steve Evans, and then a few hours later it was official. It was a surprise.
Just a very, very weird one, wasn't it? I just couldn't quite grasp it. Then I saw some story there about the fact that apparently there's a clause in Evans's contract that basically says he can leave for a championship club for a certain fee. And obviously now that Stevenage have no chance of winning the playoffs or getting into the playoffs in League One, essentially Rotherham, right, we'll do it now then. And Evans like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting the Stevenage fans are having to sort of take a bit of humble pie because they got a bit angry about Lummy's comments about him, saying like he does this, he goes into a club, does brilliant for 2 years, turns around, and then first chance he has to jump ship to a bigger club, he will go. And he's done that again. He's done exactly what he always does, and fair play to him. He's a good manager. He knows what he's doing, and you got to accept that's the way he works. So it'll be interesting to see what reception he gets next season at Stevenage with Rotherham. But there you go.
Yeah, that will be funny.
Yeah, indeed. Right, we're going to take a short break, and then I'll be back after the break to talk to one of the guys from the Wycombe Way podcast for part of put my teeth back in, for the Behind Enemy Lines section, where we're going to talk about how Matt Bloomfield has settled in after they, losing their long-serving manager Ainsworth last season, how he's coped with picking up the reins, the controversy around their attempt to buy Reading's training ground, and some of their memories of trips to Brunton Park in the past, because they've had some pretty good days out at Brunton Park, I think it's fair to say. So I'll be back just after the break to talk with the guys from Wycombe Way.
Hi, I'm Owen Moxon, and you're listening to the Brunton Bugle.
Yes, we're into part 2, and it's time for Behind Enemy Lines, where we speak to the opposition podcast of the team that we're facing this weekend. And obviously this weekend, that means we're facing Wycombe Wanderers in the final home game of the season. So we're speaking to George from the Wycombe Way podcast blog. You do all kinds of stuff, don't you guys?
Yeah, it's a bit of everything. I can't keep up all the time, but it's a podcast, a blog, all the social media. So yeah, we do an awful lot.
Yeah, good stuff, George. Before we get going and talk about Wycombe, just tell us that. Well, you've sort of given a little introduction there, but how did the Wycombe Way come about? How did it all start?
It was a long time now, 7 or 8 years now.
Oh, wow.
Back when I first got into using Twitter, I don't think that the fan blogs were a massive thing at the time. The bigger clubs had one, but certainly in the lower leagues they weren't commonplace. So there was an opportunity there to do something for Wycombe. It's just sort of, bigger and bigger over time and, amassed quite a big following.
And it's been quite a successful period for you as a club, hasn't it, really? And in terms of, the Gareth Ainsworth era, which kind of brings me on quite nicely to the first sort of question generally. So what's this season been like? The first full season without Gareth Ainsworth for, 11, 12 years, something like that? Mm-hmm. Matt Bloomfield's been in charge. It's been up and down, I think it's fair to say, but it seems like this end to the season, you picked up that bit of form and you sort of levelled out into that mid-table position.
Yeah, I think we've sort of plateaued quite nicely. So it's a good place to end the season. Like you say, Bloomfield's first full year. I think if you'd offered us at the start of the season, sort of mid-table and a visit to Wembley, most people would have been fairly happy with that. There was a really barren spell sort of just after Halloween through to Christmas where we didn't win in 17. Which questions were asked, and rightly so. But I think we recruited really well in January, made some really positive signings who have come in and changed our fortunes. This is probably the worst time of the year to build up momentum ahead of the summer where you're not playing. But I think we're 6 out of the last 7 won, plenty of clean sheets. There's lots to be positive about. The last few games have given us a good insight of who's going to be here next year, who won't be here. So it's a exciting time for the club, not just because the summer's around the corner, but I think Bloomfield is learning on the job really, really well. So lots to be excited about.
You mentioned recruitment there. I've got to ask you about that because last summer you signed some loan signings, and I remember, I think when we spoke to you guys back in whenever it was September, what it was last year, you particularly were quite excited about Cian Brecken as a player you had brought in, and there was Harry Boyd, obviously from Sheffield United, I think Killian Phillips from Crystal Palace. All three of them were recalled or went back to their parent clubs in January. So what actually happened there? But did it just not quite work out with them?
I mean, it was mostly to do with that poor run of form. Cian Brecken just, hands down, wasn't good enough to get in the team. Didn't get a look in because he wasn't up to the. I think it was more the physical side of League One. A really good player with his feet, who I'm sure will, do good things in his career, whether that's at Man City or elsewhere. But the physical side of League One, especially in sort of Wycombe's team, you've got to be on it. And he was nowhere near that level. Harry Boyd was a left wing back. We soon realised we were going to have to go to a back four because the back five wasn't working. So we sent him back, and he obviously went out on loan to Fleetwood. And then Killian Phillips was a weird one really, because he was playing really, really well. Not massive technical ability, but a really passionate lad. You could tell he wanted to be at Wycombe. Only a loan spell, but some players, they go on loan to the EFL clubs and they're just there to sort of, because they've got to be there. Their clubs have sent them there. They're not too asked about the performances, but you could tell that he was enjoying his football. He wanted to be with us. I think there was a minor falling out. I think it was at Leighton Orient just after Christmas. He was subbed off in a 0-0 where Wycombe was sort of on top, and he wasn't happy about it. Nothing public was said, but I think you could tell that he was frustrated. So I think something happened there behind the scenes, and he was sent back to Crystal Palace, and then went to Aberdeen. So it's a mixed bag with our summer signings. I think Bloomfield had to make a lot of calls with who he sent back. I think we've made 12 signings in the summer. 5 of them left by January, including Richard Keogh, who's now been relegated with Forest Green. It shows that he can make the big calls. I think he made the right calls on most of them, brought in quality to replace them. So, we can't be too annoyed about the January window because it paid off in the end. Yeah.
I mean, some of the ones you signed in January, which ones really stood out for you, the ones that we should probably look out for? Besley Barr has been one of those players. He was brilliant when he went to Crawley, I think, originally, wasn't he? And he's just... It never quite worked out for him. Was it Blackpool? I think he was at for a bit. He never quite kicked on there. So is he one, I'm guessing, who's done quite well? And I think Kem Campbell did okay at Charlton first half of the season, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, we had Kem Campbell last season. Didn't really like the place up. Had a decent spell at Charlton, but again, he was sort of one that we couldn't understand why he was brought back in. I think it's a familiar club, which I think Wolves would have wanted rather than experiment with him again. But, he's done nothing too much. He's done nothing wrong. He won't be here next season. He won't have a career at Wolves, but it is what it is. Nigel Longwick's come in from Wolves. He's been excellent, absolute Rolls Royce. Promoted with Plymouth last year, and you can see why, because he's just fantastic. And Besley Barlow, I think he's 25, 26. He's been at a few clubs already. But a great personality, always smiling. Again, a few question marks with him because he's never scored too many goals anywhere. But he's bagged a few. He plays with a smile on his face. He's really eager to get involved with the play. Just a likeable bloke who I'm sure will be here for a few years and will win a lot of people over.
Yeah, I'm just looking. He has been at a few clubs, hasn't he? Crawley, Blackpool, Northampton, Colchester, Burton, obviously, if he signed him from. So, yeah, he's one who probably just needs to sort of settle down somewhere, I guess, doesn't he? And I think the only one that stood out me was Saxon Early, because he did really well at Stevenage last season. Gone loan, and then Plymouth paid quite a lot to sign him permanently from Norwich, and he's obviously not kicked on and not been able to kick on at Norwich, I guess. So he's an interesting signing as well.
Yeah, again, a player that we needed to sign a left back in January, and I think Saxon was one we were excited about because of his season at Stevenage last. But again, I think he came to us with an injury that was meant to clear up within a few weeks. But I don't know if it's the same injury that's got worse or it's a new one. But he was ruled out for the season middle of March, so we were never going to see him. But again, he's an exciting young player who I'm sure Plymouth have got plans for. but he's one that we were excited to see because I think he would have improved us massively.
Yeah. It's hard to have this conversation without mentioning the whole Reading training ground furore. It seems to have died down a little bit now. I'm guessing it probably hasn't with the Reading fans. I'm sure they're still
Not at all.
moody about it. But I mean, how difficult was that as a fan of a club? Because you want your club to be ambitious. You want them to move forward, and it's a big opportunity. And from what I've read, the club seems to suggest that they were told certain things by Reading that this would guarantee, and that probably wasn't the truth. And I suppose it's been a sort of unwanted distraction, hasn't it, to your season?
Yeah, I mean, the timing wasn't great because it was that point in the season where we were again sort of up and down in the form table. We had the Wembley Ship on the horizon. So the timing of it was really weird, but I think it was orchestrated by Reading. I don't want to say too much because I'll get in trouble again. My mentions at the time were absolutely filled with
I remember, yeah.
all sorts of rubbish. But yeah, they approached us with a really good offer. We said yes. And it's a weird one because we had to sort of remember that one side of it, Reading fans are really in the mud. No guarantee of having a club next year, but for Wycombe, you've ended up with Premier League facilities for a really good price. It shows ambition. The money's there. We will spend the money in the future. So we were obviously buzzing about it from that sense. But then it sort of came out that the planning permission was tailored to Reading. Wycombe then dropped the process. And then a week later, Reading Council said that Wycombe would have no issues in getting that planning permission changed. So I guess a massive faff that didn't really need to happen. But it was a weird one. Reading fans are still going on about it. I think they want a rivalry because they can't have one with anyone in the bigger leagues. So yeah, it was just a interesting distraction. It was good to talk about, and it sort of shows that Wycombe can now compete with the biggest spenders in the league. Maybe not obviously on the playing squads, but the money's there to improve the infrastructure, which aligns with the future aspirations.
Yeah, it's very similar to us in the sense that our new owners, who also are Americans as well, they're looking to invest in terms of training grounds, stuff like that. You can see that. We don't normally talk about the EFL Trophy on our podcast. We don't even mention the results of the games that we play in it. But I'll let it slide for this one because it was two League One teams playing in the final, and you guys got there. How gutting was that at the end there, where you get that equaliser, and then a freak goal like that gives the win to a really strong Peterborough side. You've got yourselves back against them. It must have been a great day out, but that must have been so frustrating. That.
Yeah, I mean, like you, we didn't want to talk about it too much, but it sort of got to the semi-finals, and we were like, we've sort of probably got to mention it now. I mean, if that was the playoff final and we lost like that, I would have been absolutely gutted. Yeah. I wasn't actually there. I was on a family holiday because I didn't really fancy rescheduling that for the EFL Trophy. But I watched it on telly, and even then, it was gutting. To concede like that after a really, really good performance, because to limit Peterborough, a possession-based side on a big pitch like Wembley, is really, really tough to do. So there were a lot of comments saying that Wycombe were far too negative, but I think actually it was a really good performance in terms of nullifying Peterborough's threat. Because I think on the 90 minutes, it was sort of quite even actually. But with Wycombe starting to play, it was never really going to go in our favour. And we were close. It was 2 goals that perhaps could have been prevented. The second one is a 1 in 1,000 fluke goal that he never does again. No. So really, really good to get to Wembley. I think it is a highlight of the season, but it makes it a successful season. To be mid-table, to get to Wembley in the final, it does make it a good season. Yeah.
This weekend, I'll see you making the long trip up for your last away game of the season, up to Brunton Park. Now, I'm guessing, I look at you, we're talking on a webcam setup here. You look too young to remember your first ever game in the league at Brunton Park. So Brunton Park is a place with a lot of good memories for Wycombe fans, isn't it? I think it's fair to say.
Mm-hmm. I've heard a lot about the past visits to Brunton Park, especially in that first season in the EFL for us. Unfortunately, I can't make it up there this weekend. It's very empty. We're moving out next Wednesday. So it comes at the wrong time of year.
Yeah.
We were planning on it since the start, because it's one of those journeys that when you get the chance, you really should do it.
Yeah.
All that way. But yeah, I mean, I've heard good things about Carlisle. Even the years that I've been watching Wycombe, we've had some good visits up there.
Yeah.
Remember, there's a 3-all lead. Well, I think it's the year we got promoted actually.
Yeah.
We scored a last-minute goal, literally last kick of the game. But we
It was
always
Tuesday
seem to
night
go
game,
up
that
there.
wasn't it? I think, if I remember rightly. Yeah.
I think so. I don't think we've played you on a Saturday for years.
No, not
Not away from home anyway. You seem to chuck it on the Tuesday night schedule with your Boltons and your Wigans.
Yeah, it's just, well,
Yeah.
we've had, well, but Cheltenham actually was rearranged, to be fair, but we've had some stinkers in recent seasons on Tuesday nights. So, yeah, always seems to be the case with the EFL. George, you've been very generous with your time because we're recording this quite late at night. We've both just done our own podcast, so we've managed to fit this in. Before you go, it's one game to go this season. What are you going to predict for this one?
I'm going to predict goals. I'm sure that Carlisle will want to bow out their home season on a high. Wycombe's last away game of the season. I'm sure we're going to want to, go up there and put in a performance. I'm going to say 4-4.
Oh,
I want to see goals.
Goals
I want to
galore.
see some attacking play.
Yeah.
Just no tactics, just attack and vibe. So I'm going to go 4-4.
Yeah. Well, 4-4. I mean, to be honest, I could see us conceding goals. Scoring goals, that many, maybe not quite so much, but there you go. George, I can happily wish you all the best for the rest of the season, because only one game to go after this, so there you go. Hope you have a great summer, and I think League One's going to be a tough league next season, looking at some of the teams that are coming down, especially the teams that have come up. At least two of them are going to be probably wanting to challenge for a playoff place at least, so it's going to be a bit of a slog for the teams that are already in there, but genuinely wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, it's Tom Piatak II, and you're listening to the Brunton Bugle.
And we're back for part 3 of this week's Brunton Bugle. Thanks once again to the guys from the Wycombe Way for speaking to us ahead of the game this weekend. A game that doesn't really mean much for either team. They're pretty much, I suppose they're fighting for a place in the top half, I guess. After a rocky patch during the middle of the season, they've picked themselves up for the second half of the campaign. So there's something to play for them. But for us, it's pride, and that's it, isn't it, Adam?
Yeah, well, I think even for them, it's still technically pride, because there's not anything that they can achieve. I mean, obviously, like I say, finishing the top half would be good, but it's not something that's going to massively affect them. They're not going to get any extra money or anything. Or
I think you do get a little bit more, but it's not a massive
maybe a little
amount.
bit, but
it's
yeah,
not a huge amount.
But for the players, it's probably not going to be a massive incentive. So,
No.
I mean, I don't think it'll change the result, but even though they've got nothing to play for, as do we. But yeah, it's going to be. I think it'll be interesting to see the turnout for the game, because obviously it's the last one of the season, and also how many people stay afterwards, because they are going to do a lap of the pitch, the players.
A lap of thanks, I think it's been called. I think
Yes.
Simo's very, very clear. We're not celebrating anything. We just want to say thank you for the support. I think it'll be fairly empty. I think quite a few people will leave. I spoke to a few people saying, "Look, I don't want to stay to do whatever. It's fine." It's a shame, really, because there's going to be a few players there who were brilliant for us last season and we won't see again. Your likes of your Thomas Holeys, and you want to say thank you to them for all they've done, and it just kind of just because it's all ended in a bit of a damp squib. It's we're not really going to get that chance. Real shame. Let's talk about Wycombe Wanderers then. So, what were your expectations for them this season? Because I think we were sort of hit and miss on the previews we did in the summer. So I'm pretty sure Mike had them down in the playoffs. So he was looking a bit stupid at one point. It probably doesn't still look that great. I had them down as a surprise struggler, which wasn't looking too bad at one point, but they've obviously picked up the form. They've finished in mid-table. Looking back with hindsight, it's probably about right for them, isn't it?
Yeah, and especially with the players they've signed, it's not anything that's really jumping out as a top window. There's a few decent moves here and there, but based off their history, I mean, I know they were in the Championship not too long ago, but that was just because of them getting into the playoffs via the average points system that had to be used in COVID to decide the playoffs. So it wasn't like they would really, really earn that position. They came straight back down. But yeah, they're just sort of they're like the Bristol City of League One. They're decent, but I don't think they'd have to do well to sort of really push for those top 6 places.
They occasionally threaten to do it. They've got themselves to be a settled League One side, and they're not quite at the Rotherham level of bouncing between the 2 divisions, but that's what they're aspiring to get to, and that's the next step for them. And and the problem is I think the biggest challenge for them is going from a long-serving manager of, 10, 12 years, was it, that Ainsworth was in charge there, something ridiculous like that, to go from that to a completely new manager. That's a big challenge, isn't it, for any club?
Yeah, and especially with, the way Ainsworth likes to play football definitely wasn't in keeping with the modern expectations of fans and things like that. So I'm not too aware of Bloomfield's style, but I don't imagine it's quite as sort of direct and potentially defensive as Ainsworth like to be. So that change as well for the players and just for the whole mentality of the recruitment and things like that would have been a big change. So maybe that's partly to do with why they struggled early, but they've levelled out now, and like I said, they're probably about where they should be. Yeah,
I'm just looking here. He 11 years he was in charge at Wycombe. Which is in the modern game is some going in. At a club like that, you create an identity. The team always plays the way you play. Like you said, a new manager comes in, even though Bloomfield's someone who played under Ainsworth, it doesn't guarantee that they're going to straight away play exactly the same way. He'll have his own ideas, as you say there. He'll have his own way he wants the team to play. So, it's a big change for them. In terms of when they did recruitment, there was some interesting... they lost Lewis Wing to Reading, which was a big bloke. We all know what a good player he is. And your likes of Abita went to Hibernian, and there's a few more left. Some interesting players came in, though. They brought in Cian Brecon and Harry Boyce from Manchester City and Sheffield United, respectively. Both got recalled in January, though, didn't they? Cian Brecon, there was a big expectation from the signing. I remember they were shouting about how good a signing he was. Only played 9 times from the end, only 2 starts. Didn't quite work out that, did it? I think they relied on players already had. Luke Lee from Shrewsbury was a big one because he was Shrewsbury's captain, wasn't he? So to get him in. Richard Keogh didn't quite work out as they'd hoped. He ended up leaving to go to Forest Green in January. So, some interesting players in there. When you look through the squad, it's just a good, solid League One squad, isn't it, I think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a few like standout names like Tafazoli. He's been a solid centre back for a while. I think it's Jason McCarthy the right back. I feel like he's a full back, but I can't remember.
Saxon Ely is an interesting one because he was on loan at Stevenage, wasn't he? And he did really, really well then. Norwich sold him to Plymouth, and he's not quite done it at Plymouth, so he's gone back out on loan again. So he was an interesting one coming in January, and then.
Sam Vokes and Brandon Handlin up front. Yeah. Just experience forwards.
Bez Libel has always been a good player at lower league level.
As you said, it's a squad that's going to keep you in League One, but it's probably not going to push you too far up the table.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the next step for them is to develop further. On that point, obviously, the whole Reading training ground thing, probably a distraction they could have done without in the last couple of months of the season. It's not affected their form on the pitch, but it's something that caused a bit of controversy at the time, I think it's fair to say.
It was just a bad look, just being an enabler for what is an awful owner of a football club.
I think they were a bit...
the first ones at the carcass of Reading and just taking their assets at the cheapest amount.
I feel like they were a bit naive as well, weren't they, in terms of believing what the owner said in terms of, the money's going to help the club keep running, whatever. And then when they actually looked into the details and realised they couldn't actually do much with the training ground beyond what had already been done and stuff, and adapting stuff was going to be a challenge. So it was kind of like, that's the thing. That's when they backed up. Like we've been sold a bit of a lie here as well. So yeah, not ideal. It's probably created a nice little rivalry there out of nothing. So I'm sure they'll enjoy that in years to come. But yeah, I think I imagine next season if they want to kick on and try and challenge for a playoff place, it's going to be tough for them. I could see them settling into mid-table over the next 2 or 3 years, really, and then the risk for them is to not drop down into that bottom 6, bottom 8, really, isn't it?
But it's also the balancing act of keeping fans happy.
Yeah,
but because they, when you look at the teams at the top end, you've got like your Peterboroughs, your Barnsleys, your Boltons. Obviously, Portsmouth gone up, Derby. The teams who are likely to be coming down. You have Sheffield Wednesday coming down there, another big team. Huddersfield, potentially Birmingham City. Wycombe really don't have the they don't have the budget or the resources to compete with these teams. So
yeah.
I think fans have to, even though we probably will be guilty of this at some point if things start to level out a bit for Carlisle. We need to be a bit realistic about, what the achievements are likely to be, and rather than pushing too far and it really backfiring, just having a sort of gradual build is probably the best thing for them going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably going to take them a bit of time to get themselves. They've had that taste of the Championship. The key is to not get too overexcited about that and know realistically what your targets are, because it's going to be a tough division this next season again, because you look at the teams coming down. Rotherham have gone big in terms of getting a good manager in early on already. I think Sheffield Wednesday are down there again, aren't they? You have Birmingham City, you got Huddersfield, teams like that could come down. It's going to be a real slog for at the top once more.
Yeah, and then look at the teams. Well, I'm pretty sure. I feel like Wrexham have opened as favourites to win League One next season or to get promoted, or it's like good odds for Wrexham. I mean,
it's 8
which
to
is
1,
just
I think
stupid.
I know the thing is they haven't got the Championship clubs confirmed yet, and the teams that are potentially going to go up, they aren't listed either. So it's a tough one.
I know, but even still,
8 to 1.
It's amazing. 8 to 1s, yeah, exactly. And with something I think we've spoke about quite a lot is that Carlisle might have timed their promotion quite well, because we've hit League One hasn't been, I know we've been relegated, but League One hasn't been brilliant this season, but League Two and the Championship have been really strong.
Yeah.
So then the strong teams from those are going to converge in League One, and we're going to drop down to a slightly not as strong League Two.
And if we can actually build ourselves to be a top 3 team, possibly.
Exactly.
Getting promoted that way with momentum might be better than last season, where we didn't crawl over the line. We didn't sort of stumble at times, but I think even stumble's not hard. I think we found that second win, didn't we, really? And it sounds like stumble, but we actually were good in the playoffs. But prior to that, we hadn't had a real run of form, and we used up all of our energy.
We stumbled into the playoffs. Yeah. Is probably the better way to put it.
Yeah, exactly.
And we sort of found our feet.
But then after that, we were just exhausted, and we just couldn't really pick ourselves up. That was the problem. Right, let's go through some of the stats and bits like that. Referee for this one, Benjamin Speedy from Merseyside. It is.
Expect him to be quick.
Yeah, I think it's about. Very good. It's his 4th season.
Where's the drums?
Oh, sorry. Hang on.
Yes.
Thank you.
First one.
Missed it. Right.
For you, Mike.
He will have appreciated that as well. Although he probably would have gone right. I bet he's a bit slow or something like that. He would have gone the opposite, I'm sure. 4th season as the EFL referee. He's handed out 34 games to be in charge of this season, handing out 107 yellows and 4 red cards. Last season, handed out 139 yellows and 6 red cards in 36 games. Very card happy, to say the least. Last game he took charge of United was the 1-0 defeat at Leyton Orient last season, sending off Orient's Charlie Kilman in that game. Head-to-head record. Only played them 24. This will be the 24th time we played them. And in the previous games, we've won 5. There's been 9 draws and 9 wins for the Chairboys. So we've not got a great record against them. In fact, we haven't won in the last 3 games against them. But prior to that, prior to the last 2 games, we were unbeaten in 5 games against them. So we've had a decent run until the last 3 or so. So, yeah, you never know. Overall form, they currently sit 7th in the last 6 games form tables. They're in decent form, to be fair. Their record is 1 lost, drawn, and 1-1, so they're unbeaten in the last 4 games. United are 14th with a record of drawn, 1 loss, 1 loss. So our form's actually not too
bad.
That's
not bad,
though. This is the thing. If we get a win and a loss in the last 2 games,
if that was our form for half a season, we'd have a decent chance of staying up. Obviously, because it says 14th in the thing. But even, if you were just to take the first half of the season or the second half and have, a couple of wins every 8 games and then 1 or 2 draws and things like that, it's just because we've had those long runs of no points.
Yeah. I genuinely think, actually, we're ending the season in okay, not in brilliant form, but okay form. And actually, I'm fine with that, because realistically, we weren't going to end it in sparkling, battering everybody, 6-game unbeaten run, were we? But to actually get a few results together and say, okay, there's still a bit of pride in there. I don't mind that. I think that's fine. Last time out, they got a 2-1 win over Port Vale. Again, another Port Vale. Just, oh God, they're having an awful season. So yeah, it's some interesting results for them lately. Let's talk about United then now, Adam, to wrap things up here. What do we think? I mean, there's not much to pick from, is there, really? The big question is whether Gibson and McCalmont come back in. And I suppose if Coyote is fit enough, do you maybe rest Armstrong and give Coyote and Kelly a run up front, possibly, for this one?
Maybe, yeah. If you can do... Well, I think the question would be, unless you can do 45...
Yeah.
Then there's really not much point in starting.
No.
If you can do 45, then you can see where he's at half time, and if he feels okay, then you can give him extra 10, 15 if you want to. If not, you can just bring Armstrong on.
Yeah.
I think it'll be interesting to see where Gibson and McCalmont will be in the squad, because I do think they'll be in the squads.
Yeah.
But also, if any of the younger players, because is it Aaron Fitzpatrick has been recalled?
So I think
from Workington.
Jake Allen and Sam Hetherington are staying with Workington for another game, I think, at least. So Aaron Fitzpatrick has been brought back to cover for Jack Robinson's injury. Finn Back is available again, apparently. He's going to be fit. Dylan McGeek has trained this week, but I think the feeling is it's going to be a little bit too soon for him. So I suspect he won't be involved. No, there's no point. He's turned out for next season, so yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because it's the last game of the season at home, if there are any kids on the bench, whether Simpson goes, "I'll go on then, I'll give you your debut, and just give you something to remember." And in case these lads don't get into the first team and things like that, it's a game. If we're losing 3-0 or something like that, where we don't have anything to play for, and he just goes, "Right, have this experience, boys, enjoy it." I think it'll be interesting to see whether that will be done, but there might not be space for them on the bench if you've got these players returning.
No, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see whether Simo does put them back in or not. My feeling is I think Gibson might be involved. I think McCalmont won't be, and that's just me. There's complete guesswork here.
That'll be some statement.
Possibly, yes.
Because Gibson's not got a contract for next season, and McCalmont does.
Yeah, I don't know what. There's no background knowledge on this. There's no insider or anything. I just have a feeling. I don't know why. Just something doesn't quite sit right with me for it. So there you go. Right, let's have a prediction for this one then, Adam.
I will say that it will be a 1-1 draw with a goal from Sam Lavelle.
Okay, Sam Lavelle getting another goal. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. Let's end it with a positive. Why not? I mean, if my prediction's been right, we'd have won the title by now. So, 2-1 win. Goals from Georgie Kelly and Big John Mellish. Go on, I'm going to go for those two.
I thought you were going to go Luke Armstrong.
No, I was tempted, but I've been predicting for too long, and I want to give him a chance. He might do it now that I've not predicted him, so there you go. Right, here's Dan's prediction for this game.
At the point of the season now where I really don't care what the result is, let's go for a 4-4 draw with goals from Armstrong, Kelly, Lavelle and Jordan Gibson back in the side.
Wow, he's chasing the points there, isn't he? We're putting a load of goal scorers in the cheeky sod. Well, there you go, 4-4 draw. That's something that'll be spectacularly entertaining at the very least, wouldn't it? There you go. Right, let's have Mike's prediction now.
I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw with goals from Armstrong and Kelly.
Yep, thanks, Mike, for your prediction as well for this one. Right, let's go into the final section and wrap things up for this week. There's a few bits to cover in the X-Files. So starting out, we've got goals to cover and a few red cards, but also promotions and relegations. It's that stage of the season where we can start talking about them. Right, first up, last weekend, goals. James Tavernier. Tavernier? I always get this wrong. Is it Tavernier or Tavernier?
I think it's Tavernier.
Tavernier.
I think it's Tavernier.
We used to say Tavernier when I was working at the club, I'm sure, and he never corrected it, so it's Tavernier. Anyways, James Tavernier scored a penalty for Rangers, but it was a 3-2 defeat against Ross County, and it's a massive blow alongside their draw in midweek for their title hopes, isn't it? So
yeah, they're really squandering this one, as they seem to be doing on a quite frequent basis, which my girlfriend's dad, who's an adamant Rangers supporter, is not happy with. So I'm sure next time I see him, he'll be raging about their performance, but yeah, this is the thing with, like, imagine if Ross County played even against like a Leicester or a Leeds, they'd get absolutely battered.
Yeah.
But Rangers and that just seem to, it's an odd league.
Well, it's a strange one, because I remember it was Derek Adams, wasn't it, early this season, had that big rant, didn't he, about how terrible Ross County were and how his Morecambe team were better than them. So, well, that probably maybe says something about Derek Adams' management at that level these days, but there you go. Naki Wells scored a 101st minute penalty in Bristol City's 1-1 draw with Huddersfield Town. Should note, we missed this last week as well. He hit 100 goals in the Championship in midweek as well. So congratulations to Naki. Jack Marriott got his first goal for Wrexham in their 6-0 hammering of Forest Green Rovers. A big win for them, because they got promoted as well, didn't they? Which brings on something in a minute.
The underdog story continues.
Yes, indeed. Brandon Comley was sent off for Walsall in their 3-1 home defeat to Notts County. Nathaniel Knight Percival scored for Tamworth in their 3-2 win over South Shields. Conor Tinian was sent off for Workington in their 3-0 defeat at Marine. He's also announced he's retiring, hasn't he? So
yeah, him and his name escapes me.
Scott Allison,
Workington. That's the one.
Yeah, he's the Penrith lad, isn't he? They signed from Penrith years and years and years ago. So, yeah, Connor's, I think, been there for 12 years since he left the Blues. And, yeah, what a fantastic servant he's been for Workington down the years in terms of his contribution there. Fair play to the lad. So he's leaving at the end of this season. Manny Mampala, he scored a consolation goal for Hyde United in their 4-1 defeat at Gainsborough Trinity. Matty Douglas scored a goal for Annan Athletic in their 4-2 win over Cove Rangers. They've got a really good chance of staying up now, haven't they, Annan? Which is remarkable when you think about it.
Yeah, they've done well, especially off the back of the past few seasons where they've maybe been slightly overachieving, and now they're sort of finding the level, it seems. So it's good to see. Yeah,
really, really good. Obviously, we should say Kai Nugent's done really well there as well this season. He's not played every game, but he's got some really good experience, the young lad. And obviously, Max Kilsby's been getting good experience at Adden and Queen of the South second half of the season. And Queen of the South, Gavin Riley scored for them in their 2-0 win over Edinburgh City. Have obviously very comfortably been relegated in that division. I think 5 points all season they've picked up. God, it must be miserable following them. I mean, actually, in fact, have you seen their ground, what they've done to it? It's dreadful, because they play at their Flex Stadium, don't they? And the council revamped it, and the stat. All I'm going to say to everyone is just go and look at what the setup is there, Edinburgh City's ground. It's absolutely shocking. It's terrible, terrible. Into midweek.
Something I'm not looking forward to. Interrupting you. If Gateshead to get promoted, because obviously they've got that big athletics thing around their thing too.
But I mean,
I don't think it's probably as bad as to what you.
No.
But
the Edinburgh City one's literally about 3 rows deep. That's as big as the standing.
Let me have a look at this.
There's a huge sports centre behind it as well. It's just an awful ground. You can look that up now. Gateshead come up. You know what? We could take 4,000 or 5,000 fans there. Can you imagine that? 4,000 or 5,000 Blues on the lash in Newcastle for the weekend. That would be a delight for a tiny away place, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, have you managed to find it?
I think I have. That is awful.
Yeah, it's terrible, isn't it? And it used to be a fairly decent setup there, but it's and then you have to stand behind the goal, way behind the. It's just awful ground. Into midweek, Paddy Madden scored a hat-trick, netted 3 times in Stockport County's 5-2 win at Notts County. I think my tip of maybe we could look to sign him next season is not looking that great, if I'm being brutally honest.
It's not going
to happen, very unlikely. So that brings us on to promotion and relegation. So one we missed, I think, the week. I mean, we might mention, I can't remember. Mike Jones got promoted with Chesterfield. Fantastic stuff to see Mike back in the Football League with the Spy-Rights. Really, really good. Paddy Madden.
Have you seen their form since?
Oh, they've enjoyed it. They have enjoyed it. And I don't blame them the slightest.
So much on the beach.
Don't
they lost to Gateshead as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And did you see that their keeper last night got sent off to put They didn't have one on the bench.
Oh, their outfield
they just played 10 men without a goalkeeper or recognised goalkeeper. I think he made a few saves, but they lost in the end.
Good stuff. Yeah, Paddy Madden, as we mentioned just before there, he secured the League 2 title in midweek with Stockport County. Jack Marriott, Aaron Hayden and Mark Howard all promoted to League 1 with Wrexham. Congratulations to them. Owen Moxon, obviously we had his little clip there earlier on, and we put that in for a reason because he was promoted to the Championship and won the title with Portsmouth midweek. What a game for them to win it. Did you see the goal that won it? It's identical pretty much to the one they scored against us, wasn't it? With Shock Nessie getting on the end of it. They had a big pitch conversion.
He's got a fair few big goals for them, because obviously against us, that game, I think there's another one or two where he scored in late 80th minutes, 88th minute, or into
big
90th
play for those goals, isn't he? Yeah.
He's been a brilliant signing for them.
Some amazing videos of their fans celebrating in O'Neill's. Left in a little bit of a state, I think it's fair to say.
Just a
but
bit.
There's some sites there, and there was a brilliant clip, I don't know if you've seen it, of one of their players, Paddy Lane, getting interviewed on the local breakfast.
Yeah.
Clearly still drunk from the night before. So wonderful stuff there. Don't blame them at all for enjoying it. Nicky Adams promoted as captain of Radcliffe. Well done to him. Tyrese Omotoya and Richard Keogh relegate to the National League with Forest Green Rovers. Oh dear. Not good for them. And Charlie Wyke relegated from the Championship to League One whilst on loan at Rotherham United. And I think that's all the promotions relegations covered for now. If you missed any, please let us know, because we're happy to mention them. There's probably some non-league ones we haven't quite picked up on, but there you go. That's it for this week's episode, Adam. Thanks very much for joining me.
No, it's good to be back on.
Yeah, and 2 games to go. We're nearly there. We're nearly at the summer. We're nearly ready for those new signings to come in and get excited about them. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that'll be coming soon. But there you go. Thanks once again to our sponsors, London Branch, for their support this season. Really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for putting up with this season and listening to us. We really appreciate the support you've all given us in terms of, just mentioning it at the ground or really enjoy listening to the show. Really, really appreciate that. It really, really does help us. We don't mention this often enough, but if you have a chance and wherever you get your podcast, if you can review us and give us 5 stars, really, really would appreciate that. It helps people find the podcast a lot easier. So really, really appreciate it. Which only leaves me one thing left to say, and that's up the Blues.
Up the Blues.